my directing prop.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this behind-the-scenes look at our fabulous production of the Magic Flute. Today, we are joined by our incredible director, David Radamés Toro. David joins us originally from Colorado Springs, but he has been directing our show remotely from his new hometown in Minneapolis. I will tell you that my love for David started last summer when I saw the incredible production of Callisto that he directed at Opera Neo. I can't imagine anyone else taking on this incredible, challenging project of directing this Magic Flute remotely, and I am so delighted to be joined by David here today. Let's jump right into it. I would love to know from you, what drew you to directing, and specifically to directing opera?
When I was little, I still do overactive imagination. I have very overactive imagination. And I would score with my X-Men figures, like these big epic scenes, not just like battles, but like scenes to classical music, like my mom's records. It'd be conversations or big scenes and so I always thought, I've been doing this for long enough, scoring music and and drama. My undergrad degree and my master's are all in voice. And while I was at Ohio State doing my master's, I basically got adopted by the theater department. I decided to take a class called Viewpoints. This actor I was dating at the time suggested it. I had no idea what that meant at the time. He gave this explanation like, oh, that's interesting. So I took that class and it really changed everything. Like the teacher who taught it, Janine Thompson, who still teaches at Ohio State, she became my mentor. Like, she taught me Viewpoints, Suzuki. She was a student of Marcel Marceau, so she taught me mime. And all these aspects of physical theater, as well as when I was at Ohio State, like Bruce Herman was there and he was a student of Sanford Meisner. So I learned Meisner technique from a student of Sanford Meisner. And all of this kind of came together where, down to the essence of it, like Viewpoints and Meisner and all is about honesty, and physical theater is all about storytelling. And I wanted to take these new tricks I had learned, or these new crafts I had learned in theater, and apply it to opera. Actually, Peter Kozma, our lovely artistic director, was the first opera director to take me under his wing at Ohio State. Kind of a fun little reunion the last few years working with him again.
The dynamic that you both have worked so well, even on this digital medium, even across the distance. You have such a connection and understanding and respect for one another that it really just read and created a product that is obviously blowing my mind. So you were trained throughout your career in how to direct for theater, for the medium of stage. This project sort of came out of nowhere for all of us. We hadn't been preparing or really thinking about it, and you really learned on the spot how to direct in this new medium, but also not even in the same room with people. So you're not only directing for film, but you're directing for film long distance. What was that learning curve like for you?
It was steep.
That face summed it up.
Because it was not only like directing for film from a distance, but absolutely no one's in the same room. And then really trying to think like, how would I see this in a movie? Thinking about close-ups, because I love the fact that with this medium, we can have the intimacy of close-ups, something as subtle as an eye direction, where in theater, you have to make it bigger just so it reads. But in kind of this learning curve, learning to direct for film, I would sit a lot of times and just think, how would I see this as the movie in my head? Which is something one of my directing teachers at UT taught me to do. Is like, you'd always say, what is the movie going on in your head? And so I would think about that, close-ups and cutaways, things we don't have the luxury of to do in theater. And I would bring that to rehearsal. And then I'd realize that works, the movie I have in my head works when everyone's in the same room. And not only everyone in the same room, but everyone can fit on the screen. Unlike a studio, we have to fit everyone within their green screen. Mm-hmm. And not only within their own green screen, everyone has to fit in the same size of that green screen. And there are a lot of times where Peter would stop and say, David, they're not going to fit.
I'm so grateful for your years of experience and knowledge with our beloved Peter. You've really nailed it. You've nailed the impression of him.
I do it out of love, and he knows I do it out of love.
Yeah, I think that the thing I'm most excited about, and I know it's been a huge challenge and I can't imagine directing it, but that quintet is going to be so satisfying because it's such an amazing accomplishment to be able to fit all 5 of those people on screen. And not to mention that I think our 3 ladies are the best 3 ladies in the world.
They're pretty awesome three ladies, honestly. And it was fun creating the characters with them to make sure that they were all kind of individual. First lady, Michelle, she was always very by the rules. Prim, proper things go this way. And second lady, I thought of Sarah Jessica Parker's character from Hocus Pocus. She's kind of the flirtier one that will destroy you.
Yeah.
And then third lady is kind of, she's really kind of the leader of this group. She's the strongest and and kind of the foundation of this group. And they took that, we talked about it, and then they went with it, and they did such a beautiful job with it.
Well, speaking of these different characters and specifically the movie in your mind, right, as you were creating it, I would love to talk about what themes you chose to bring out in this production, and how did that affect the characters and the acting that was asked of the singers?
I've always thought of Magic Flute as somewhat problematic.
Sure.
The hero's journey is unclear, especially if we consider Tamino the hero of this opera. And then the message that we get from Zarastro, who's supposed to be this symbol of good, is problematic.
Right.
Extremely misogynistic. Back then they're trying to prove that this is the age of the Enlightenment. So you have this idea that wisdom is better than base instinct.
Yes.
And for the longest time, I didn't know what to do with this until I worked on a great production here at Minnesota Opera, and it made me think, what if Zarastro is a cult leader? And that's where I kind of started with this thought of what am I going to do with this show? Same with the Queen of the Night. I didn't want the Queen of the Night to be the typical just like mustache twirling villain, or just the completely insane woman, which the original text is trying to make this idea that women aren't controlled of their instincts and so blah, 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 blah. I couldn't see that in the Queen of the Night. And it hit me. She's a force of nature. She's this divine force of nature. And because of that, she feels in extremes. Whereas Zarastro is a cold logic. The Queen of the Night became this being who felt an extreme. She feels extreme loss from Pamina's kidnapping. Extreme anger at Zarastro. It's not that she's manic or any of that. It's just that that's her nature. It's these extremes. And this came from thinking about Pamina's role in the whole thing too.
Right.
So if the queen is the representation of nature, and Zarastro is the representation of logic and knowledge, Pamina represents a character who is both. She has her mother's instinct and Zarastro's logic, which to me made her the hero of this, because she represents the perfect human, the perfect balance of these two things. Then as I was talking with the singers, as we kind of had character talks and whatnot, which I always love doing table work. And as I got down to some of the nitty gritty that I could with the show, it made me think, okay, I think I have an idea of where Pamina's journey is, because the funny thing with opera, everyone underestimates the female characters, but they always have the hero's journey. They start in one place and end somewhere else, where most of the times the tenors are like these great people and they're always heroic and they don't really grow as much. I'm
thinking through just off the top of my head, all these different operas, the soprano so often is the one who makes the big sacrifice, Butterfly and Tosca and in Trovatore. I mean, all these things where you see the woman, the soprano lead typically is usually the one who is going on that hero's journey, and we default to thinking that it's the male character. But in this, I love the way that you're thinking of it so clearly as Pamina, really going through it.
And kind of on that idea too, that you said sacrifice, the female character goes through their sacrifice. There's this great kind of term in the comic book world called the girl in the refrigerator, or the one in the refrigerator.
I don't know this, tell me everything.
So back in the I think it was the mid 90s, DC was changing the Green Lantern. Hal Jordan was no longer going to be Green Lantern, and they were moving to Kyle Rayner. Kyle Rayner became the new Green Lantern, and within the first few issues, his girlfriend, who we knew nothing about, was brutally murdered and shoved into a refrigerator. And this sparked his hero's journey as a Green Lantern. So the girl in the refrigerator became a term to refer to these tropes in which a woman either is murdered, loses power, sacrificed for the benefit to launch a male character's hero's journey.
As a tool for the man to go on the journey, the woman.
Right.
Yes. Oh, wow.
And so that's always really stuck with me. And I wanted to make sure Pamina in the second act for Magic Flute and her suicide attempt was not something just to kind of to launch Tamino's journey. And so like applying these kind of girl in the refrigerator ideas too, it's like that's why I want to make sure Queen of the Night was just this crazy evil character, and that Pamina wasn't this lost damsel, that she had agency of her own.